So, have you or someone you love been thinking about adoption? Maybe, like me, you've dealt with infertility, or you've had a few biological children and you feel led to open your home to another child, but you're not really sure where to start. And you don't know what kind of resources are out there or what types of adoptions are even available. Well, I want to talk to you about the 5 main types of adoption that are available to you in the United States. I'm also going to share some of my experience with adoption, as my husband and I have adopted 3 children ourselves. Now, the first type of adoption that I'm going to share with you is an adoption of children that are in the foster care system. Now, these children are living temporarily in a foster home or in a group home. Now, these children are typically older children or sibling groups, whether younger or older sibling groups. Now, it's rare that there are very young children available this way because it's usually older children or sibling groups that are taken into the foster care system. Now, it's not impossible to get a much younger child, but it's not as likely as older children. This is one of the least expensive ways to adopt. There's typically no cost to you or very little cost at all. And these children in most states qualify for state insurance, such as the state Medicaid system, until the age of 18. Now, the second type of adoption that I want to talk to you about is foster to adopt. Now, this is different from adopting a child that is already in the foster care system, because with the first way, you are not their foster parent. You are a potential adoptive parent that is looking to adopt a child that has already legally been released for adoption. When you're doing foster to adopt, you go through the process of becoming a foster parent, and then a child is placed in your home with the expectation and hope that that child will become available for adoption. Now, there is no guarantee to this, because expectations and plans in foster care are for children to be reunited with the birth parents. Now, if this is not possible, if reunification is not possible, and there are no other biological family members that are willing or able to care for the child, then the child can become legally available to adoption to non-family members. And that would be first choice would be with the current foster parents. Now, this is one of the ways that we adopted. We went through foster to adopt. Now, I will say that it can be difficult and heart-wrenching, even though it is one of the cheaper ways, because there is almost no cost. There is still the hurt. If your initial goal is to adopt, you have to understand that the goal is to reunify that child or children with the birth parents. So our child, we had multiple children come through our home. Our initial plan was not to adopt. We were just planning on being foster parents. But a birth mother requested that her child be placed for adoption. She asked us if, as her foster parents, as the foster parents to her child, if we would be willing to adopt her infant son. Now, this does not happen all the time. The plan originally was reunification with the birth mother, but in this case, she felt it was in his best interest to place him up for adoption, and there were no other family members that were willing or able to take care of him. So when asked, we agreed that we would adopt him. So he came to live with us when he was 4 months old, and we adopted him when he was about 2.5 years old. So that is the second type of adoption. The third type of adoption I want to talk about is infant adoption. Now, this is the way that the majority of people in America would like to adopt. You know, everyone wants that newborn baby, that experience, especially if you're unable to have biological children. You have that interest of having that little baby. Well, unfortunately, in America, there are more people wanting to adopt than there are infants available for adoption. So the wait can be very long for that. And typically in those situations, you will go through an agency. I highly recommend going through a licensed agency for that. Another way to do an infant adoption is through an intermediary, and that would be like a physician or possibly a lawyer, and they would work with you with a birth mother. And in instances like this, birth mothers are not getting counseling. You don't get any kind of state subsidies to help out with any kind of cost if the child ends up having special needs. But of course, you know, that is not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is for that for you to become a parent and for that child. But it can be very, very costly, this type of adoption. In my research, it can be anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000. It is better to go through an agency, because then you know that it's licensed, you know that the birth mother and the child are being well taken care of. A lot of times they have birth parent homes where the birth parent will go and live while they wait to have their baby. So there are definitely some positives to making sure you go through a licensed agency for an infant adoption. So if you do decide to go through an intermediary and not through an agency, this is legal in most states, but not all. This is called an independent adoption. So if you do decide to go that way, be sure to check with your state licensing board and make sure that this type of adoption is actually legal in your state, because you don't want to come across any problems with that. Now, you can also adopt within the United States an older child. So it's not always an infant adoption. So if you're going through that agency and you're willing to adopt a child that is maybe a little bit older, maybe say a toddler, then your waiting list wouldn't be as long. Might not be as long. Also, if you're willing to adopt a special needs child, or if you're willing to adopt a child of a different race or of a mixed race. It is typically harder to find adoptive families for children of mixed race. So if your heart is open to that type of adoption, then definitely request information about that. And if you're interested in possibly special needs, you can actually tell what type of special needs you are capable of handling, you know, and be really honest with yourself about that, about what, you know, can you really deal with a child with very serious medical conditions. Some parents can and some can't. So be really honest with yourself, really look inside your heart for the benefit of yourself and for the child at what you can really handle. Okay, now the next type is where you would adopt a stepchild, or you would adopt, say, another family member or a grandchild. Now, I do have family members that have adopted a relative. I have known people who have adopted stepchildren and grandparents who have adopted their grandchildren. I know many people that have done these three types. Each state has their own rules about these, so it is important to go to your state website and find out what state rules are for that. You can go to www.adoptionchildwelfare.org. Now, I will put these links at the bottom and some other links as well to help you with adoption. So you can find those and you can go look up that information yourself. Now, the fifth type of adoption that I want to talk about is called international adoption. Now, this is another one that my family and I have experience with. We have 2 children that are adopted internationally. Our oldest child we adopted from China, and our middle child we adopted from Taiwan. And then our 3rd child was through foster to adopt. So when adopting internationally, you need to make sure that the agency that you're working with is Hague certified. Now, the Hague Convention, the Hague certified means that agency is working to the best interest of the child, and this provides security that children coming from that country, being adopted from that country, are not being sold, are not being traded, are not being kidnapped, or not being exploited. So it is very important to make sure that if you're adopting internationally, that the agency that you're looking at is Hague certified. Now, there is an agency in the United States that licenses agencies in the U.S. to be Hague certified, and it's the IAAME, and that is IAAME.net. You can go to that website, and from there you can get information. So make sure that the agency you're working with is certified with Hague. Also, you will want to make sure, whether it is with an international agency or with a domestic agency, to make sure that they have got a good reputation. You know, you want to know how long have they been licensed. You can check with your state agency, your state licensing agency about that. How long have they been facilitating adoptions? Do they have a good reputation? Do they have complaints? Also request from the agency references. And what I mean by that are references from families who have adopted through them. Now, if they refuse to give you that information, that's a red flag. You want to be able to speak with families with firsthand knowledge of the experience that they had with this agency. Also, find out what their fees are. If they're requesting all of their fees up front, that is a red flag. Most agencies, they're going to break down the fees for you, and you pay a little bit at a time as a part of the adoption, the next part of the adoption goes through. So, for example, with us, you know, we had an initial application fee. When we did our home study, we had a home study fee. When we did our passports, that was separate. When we got our licensing through the Department of Homeland Security and got permission, that was a different fee. When we got information translated by our agency to send to Taiwan or to send to China, that was a different fee. So if they're wanting all of their money up front, be concerned and do a little more research about why. And if they are not breaking down what these fees are for, then you need to find out a little more information about that. So those are the 5 main types of adoption that you can pursue in the United States. Now, in my future videos, I'm going to talk about in these different types of adoption. I'm going to go into open and closed adoptions, the things that are important to know about these different types of adoption, and I'm going to actually share some of our experiences about our travels to these different places around the world to adopt our children. So I hope you found this informative. I'm going to put some information at the bottom of the screen in the description with websites, so you can find out more information. If you have any questions for me, please subscribe and click the little bell so you can get notifications of my future videos. If you have any questions, please feel free to make a comment below, and hope to see you soon. Thanks. Bye.